The majority of cold emails are shit. They really are. They are so bad. So bad. The bar is so low. So low.
Hey, Jen, thanks for joining me. I really wanted you to come and speak on, have a conversation with you on how should Indians sell software to the US? Because I haven't met someone as enthusiastic or as intertwined in the India-US GTM sort of ecosystem as you. For those that don't know, Jen runs a company called Jellyfish. If you've ever raised VC capital, you would have, especially in India, you would have heard of Jellyfish because Jen and team have relationships with every VC. I would love for you, Jen, to tell people about who you are.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I thought that was pretty good. I mean, kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of where our focus is and what we're most passionate about. But quick intro on myself. I'm Jen. I'm one of the co-founders at Jellyfish. We've been around for about 6 years. The 0 to 1 milestone in the US market is absolutely where our passion and our heart sits. We absolutely love the ambiguity side of things. So how do you identify the pulse, know where to double down and generate that first million, which to us, we believe is one of the hardest milestones, especially in the US with how competitive and commoditized that specific region is. In terms of Jellyfish and the Indian market, we have deep roots now, I feel like, within the Indian SaaS ecosystem. I mean, there is so much energy and positivity coming out of India right now, especially with a lot of Indian SaaS founders building for the US market on day one, especially on the B2B side of things, right? The US represents at a minimum 50% of their total addressable market, if not close to 75%. So we understand why they're trying to enter as quickly as possible to find that pulse and to build that traction. And of course, also why the VC community is very interested in that region as well.
I told Jen right before this conversation that, hey, Jen, this is going to be a numbers conversation, right? We're going to try and dig as deep into the data as possible. We're going to try and find out how are these companies going from 0 to $1 million in revenue in such short bursts of time, right? So, yeah. Jen, I'm going to actually put the first question to be a more generic one to kind of set context.
Sure. A softball.
So I picked one specific thing you said, 0 to 1 million. It's the hardest. It's also your sweet spot. You've been doing it specifically in the SaaS space. So my question to you is, if I were to start tomorrow, or if you were to start tomorrow, actually that's better. If you were to start tomorrow and you had $0 in the bank and you had maybe 1 or 2 engineers just, helping you out, build the product, how do you get to the US? What is step 1? What is step 5? Like run us through the entire process.
Yeah.
And run us through it like we're all laymen.
Understood. So step 1 would first and foremost be, what is the problem? Or let's go out in search of a problem if we don't know what that problem is yet, right? And I'm going to take the insights that we've all learned from second time founders, right? Because they have the odds stacked in their favor. And I think that's probably the best lens to take this conversation in. So second time founders always start with a problem before the product, right? They know that distribution first and distribution led is absolutely critical for what you're building today. They are identifying a problem and then going out in search of a product to solve for it, right? Which is a hell of a lot easier than building a product in isolation and going out and finding a problem, right? Why? The product in product market fit is actually the most flexible part of the equation. Believe it or not, I know that seems like a misconception. And the reason being is you can essentially build anything, all of those technical solutions at the fingertips of founders today. But what's not at the fingertips of founders is always that prioritized problem where that urgency sits, where people are willing to pay. Okay. So we always say start with that because that is the biggest variable in the entire equation. When we say start with the problem, what that means is you are in search of a market that is desperate and that cares, but also you are in search of a market that understands their problem. How do you identify a market that is aware of the problem, possibly putting money towards it, and historically maybe has not solved for it as successfully as they'd like to be? Enter the competitive market. I actually believe building a product that is in a competitive space is one of the places where you're going to have the highest likelihood of finding traction, believe it or not. So that's where I would start. That's where I would go.
So essentially you're saying that you need to go after people who have some amount of money already allocated, at least in their heads, towards a problem that they have where either they're evaluating solutions, so you're one among many of those solutions, and you've niched down, right? You're saying, hey, everybody else solves this in this particular way, but I know that you have this primary problem, everyone does, but you have this secondary problem, which we solve really well, but nobody else does. So let's say, Jen, that you have managed to figure out that problem, and now you spend 3 months building out that solution with your, so let's say 3 engineer friends. Now you take that solution to the market, you put it on a website, you do a product hunt launch, you get like 5 upvotes. Now what? Right? You
Yeah.
have like one customer. How do you get to the point where you're like, hey, this is taking off? Right? Because
Yep.
I think the founder's dream is to have like n number of people coming in all the time by
Yep.
themselves, buying and moving on. So what would
Correct.
you do next?
You've got to maintain things that you can control, right? That's in first and foremost as a founder. There's so many things that people try and do, and it's not even in your control. So let's stay in the lanes of what you can control. The thing that I am so passionate about, and I've seen it work time and time again, and we've built our whole business on it, is the founder-led cold email. When you know the problem better than the market, and you know who is adamantly feeling this pain, you now can select who you go out and talk to. A personalized note sent to your ideal customer where no one else in the world could have possibly received that note is going to increase your highest likelihood of them getting on a call with you. So what you need to do as the founder is prioritizing. If you can get a room with 100 people, create a list of 100 people you want to get in the room with. I then want you spending the next week to a week and a half sending personalized notes to each and every one of those individuals. It should take you about a week and a half, which is no insignificant amount of time. Okay. In that, right, let's get into the numbers. If you do your research and you find something interesting that, again, can only speak to that individual, there's 5 metrics I want you to track when you're sending out those 100 notes. Delivery rate, the most important thing. Do you have a healthy domain where you can get into their inbox versus their spam box? Your delivery rate should be above 80%. Okay, that means if you send out 100 notes, 80% of those notes should hit their main inbox. Then we want to look at open rate. Open rate means the subject line you used and the first sentence, which is usually the preview. That open rate should be above 60%. What's 60% of 80? Let's call it 50% of all of those notes should now be opened. Then you go a layer deeper. Reply rate. Someone sees you've put in effort, they will say yes or no. Your reply rate should hover above 15%. And then of that, you should have at least 8 to 10 people willing to get on a call with you. If you send 100 notes, you should get 8 to 10 positive responses from that group. If you do not, okay, and you've sent hyper-personalized notes, the market is telling you something. All right, so just from it sending an outbound campaign in, let's call it a week and a half to 2 weeks, okay, you should be able to have a mental model around the conversion rates you need to hit to make sure that this is a market that is sustainable and cares enough about this problem.
So I have 2 questions, right? My question to you is, do you feel at this point that cold emails as a channel, similar to how advertising as a channel has sort of started getting crowded? I know your answer to this, but I'd love, the people to also know your answer to this.
Yeah. The majority of cold emails are shit. They really are. They are so bad. So bad. The bar is so low. So low. Cold email, while yes, it is a very crowded space for all of the reasons you've just mentioned, it is actually the most effective way to stand out. Now, the question becomes is, again, that's why delivery rate's important. If you're able to get in their inbox, the number one way to stand out, personalize the subject line, personalize the first sentence, right? Which is your hook. I open every single email that I get where the subject line is pertained to me, I will open it. And I'm sure that's true for you and everyone else here that's listening.
Of course. So it's a combination of effort and a little bit of creativity in the sense that you need to know what makes a person tick and kind of put in that effort. Where would you find this data of A, the kind of companies you should be going after, and B, the kind of emails you should be going after?
First and foremost, you need to figure out who the heck you're reaching out to and why, right? And build that list. That list of 100 people, they should all be similar because of a specific characteristic. Are they the same role? Do they all live in the same vertical? Do they all have a very specific tech stack that they use that we know that there's leakage because of unmet needs? Right? The 100 people that you're reaching out to need to have similar characteristics. And we call that an ICP, ideal customer profile. And there's various things you can use to determine an ICP. An ICP, right? The beauty of an ICP is you can leverage publicly identifiable, discoverable signals versus react on emotion. The only way you can get someone's emotion is if you talk to them. What are the different ways that you can segment and keep these people similar, right? Because what you want to do is find repeatable themes. Repeatable themes is what gets you to the point of $1 million, right? It's got to be sustainable and repeatable. Otherwise, you're going to be running around with your head cut off, selling everything to everyone, hoping that you get 10 people to buy it. When you reach out to that ICP, here are some things that will help you stand out. Keep the note informal. The more formality you use, the more it's going to feel like spam, and the more it's going to feel like someone that doesn't have confidence. Keep it as short as possible where I don't have to scroll on my cell phone. It sits in the window. The first sentence is that area that's going to be your most personalized because that's the preview. So write a one sentence. Why are you reaching out to them? Why them? The second line is, what's the call to action? Why are you reaching out to them? Well, I want to jump on. I would love to have a knowledge exchange for 30 minutes. The third or fourth line, why you? Why should they get on a call with you? Okay. What problem are you solving for them where they care about you? Not what product are you selling? So stay out of the product. This is where the problem-led sentence comes in, right? Make them feel like you know them better than they know themselves. And then the last sentence, right? Again, reiterating that call to action. It would be a pleasure to jump on a call for 30 minutes. Please let me know if you're open to it. Okay. Short, sweet, problem-led will deliver the results you're looking for. And if not, it means you're not targeting the right group. And remember, it will take 2 weeks to send out 100 cold notes that are personalized. So do know that this will take time.
Quick question, right? So why don't founders do this? I mean, this should be fairly common knowledge, right? To actually craft a cold email. Do you feel founders don't do this because this seems like a very exhausting thing to do and the less exciting thing to do? What have you seen?
Yeah. I think founders are allergic to sales, right? Almost the majority of the founder market right now is engineering, product centric. So sending a cold email to them just seems gross, right? Or like, that seems like such a low value task, right? Or anyone can do that. Or wow, there's all these lead gen agencies that I can outsource this to. If you don't know what works yet, a non-founder will never figure it out, right? You have the vision, you have the social title, and you have the passion to get in the room with these people. Why would someone respond to an SDR or a BDR who probably knows nothing about the problems that you're solving, right? And are just trying to scale anything to just spray the market and get meetings, right? And I think second time founders know this importance, right? They're the ones doing this work, right? When I talk to a second time founder, they're like, yep, I sent 100 notes. Here are my conversion rates. Here's where there's leakage. Here's where I need your help. Right. And there's always ways we can augment, but the cold email, I think, just has a bad rep because it seems like a low value task because it was typically delegated to the SDRs, right? Which is an entry level role, right? But it's actually the hardest thing to do when you have limited to no brand equity is to get someone to care to get on the phone with you.
Jen, I remember going to your website some time ago, I think a few months ago, and I saw this one graph, right? Where there's the graph is, I think, ACV to effort you put in.
Yep.
Right. So ACV, for people that don't know, stands for annual contract value. Right. And I remember you telling me this as well when we spoke that, hey, Varun, if you're chasing the US, try to like a minimum bar should be $30,000.
Yep.
ARR.
Yep.
Right. So could you run through that and tell us when Indians sell to the US, what's the kind of pricing they should be looking at? Should you be going after small, the founder dream is to have like people come and spend $99, pay annually by themselves without ever talking to the founder or anybody else.
Yep.
But you recommend the opposite approach. Go larger, larger the better. But isn't it hard to sell enterprise deals in the US? Like, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, no. So there's two markets you can go after. And then there's a third market where I say, stay out of it, right? You have and I call it the bookends, right? You have your enterprise, which is you're selling 75K plus, it's a 9 to 12 month sales cycle, right? Typically, you have to go through procurement, ton of hand holding, and it's herding cats. Right. But at the end of the day, you're getting a sticky client who is paying a lot of money. So it makes it worth it. Then you have the other side of the spectrum, which is $2,000 to $3,000 a year. You're selling to individuals. It's much more, or it's product-led growth, or you're selling to SMBs, right? So you can be selling it, a $5,000 to $10,000 solution to an SMB, right? And that's fine too, because that should be able to close in, sub 3 months, right? Or 90 days. Okay. So you have these two markets, and then you have the mid-market. A lot of Indian-based SaaS founders believe where they should enter. And I actually caution them. The mid-market is just as hard to close as the enterprise, right? So I would say if you're going to go big, go big. And if you're going to go more about a quantity game and getting a lot of people as quickly as possible, go down market, but stay out of this middle zone, because you're neither here nor there. But if you're solving an enterprise problem, like you're solving challenges with legal tech, or you're solving, large manufacturing problems, right? You've got to go to the enterprise. But beware, if you also want to service the SMB, it is much harder to move down market than it is to move up market.
If a founder's selling an enterprise deal in the US, maybe somebody said, hey, let's get on a call. What are the general steps? Now, I don't want you to describe everything in there.
No, of course, just mental model. Yeah. The first 3 months of an enterprise deal is getting alignment across the stakeholders that what the problem is, what the symptoms are, right? Which they usually all are if you're going after the right market, going back to our initial conversation. But more importantly, how to prioritize it and where it's going to plug in, right? Like, who owns it? Is it a marketing going to own it? Is operations going to own it? Is finance going to own it? Who's going to own it? And then who are all of the appropriate players around it? And then what budget? Who's going to come? Where's the budget going to be coming from? So I call that the herding of the cats. You have a group of 5 people, 3 to 5 people that need to get in a room and agree on this, and then say, yep, go. And then one person's going to own it from that end, right? That's going to be the lead to help you go through. The next 3 months is procurement. you are now having to resell yourself, which is they're going to, drive down price because that's where they're incentivized on saving. So make sure when you're selling something, maybe sell it for 100K, knowing that they're going to whittle you down to 65 to 75, right? Because they can, because you don't have much brand equity here and you need that logo and you need that revenue. So make sure you price yourselves accordingly, knowing you're going to have to give a concession in procurement. It is typically 90 days to get through procurement.
If you are an Indian founder, you're probably not used to selling something for $100,000, right? You just feel like, hey, this software, I took some time to build it. It's, why would somebody pay $100,000 for it, right? And I'm sure many of these people are also doing the SMB piece, right? They're sitting on the bookends. So they're like, same thing that somebody's buying for $19. Why would a business, like a large business, want to buy for 100K? Like, there's no difference. Maybe you're getting some few things, but you yourself might not believe that the product might be worth 100K plus. How do you convince founders that that's not true and the value of something is in the eyes of the beholder?
And this all comes back to being problem-led, right? Focusing on the problem. It is your job as the founder to understand the value that this is costing them. Pricing is actually an indicator to the buyer that you truly understand their problem. So be very careful about just throwing around pricing on day one. It's your job to understand, okay, now that we understand X is a problem, what are the alternatives out there that they would actually have to go out and purchase if they didn't work with you? So start with alternatives and then start with how is that pain being quantified? What's at risk if they don't solve today? What's the opportunity cost if they don't solve today, right? And understanding those numbers. Now, there is a mental model when you're an early stage startup going after the enterprise. The enterprise is smart buyers. A lot of them have worked with startups in the past, and a lot of them have been early stage startups. Most know that they can purchase a SaaS solution for somewhere between 50 to 100K, right? That is like the kind of that sweet spot that an enterprise knows that they can get right off the bat. And they'll negotiate you down, but it's your job to hold firm and say, listen, if you want me to strip, 25% of value, here, I'm going to have to strip it from the solution I'm going to be providing you, right? And just hold your ground, right? They're going to want to see what they can get away with, especially if the alternatives out there are nowhere close to where you are. If they are, right, and there's a lot of ways that they can service this, you don't really necessarily have full control over the price. So just know where you play there.
So you're saying that, don't price based on what you think the value of the solution is, price based on what the value of the solution is to a third party, right?
And the alternatives available. Yep.
So last question, Jen. When you're building an enterprise solution, right? And I know I'm gearing more towards enterprise because I also know that's where you guys excel, right? There's some clients who are going to come in or customers who are going to come in and say, hey, I like your product, but I need like 5% slightly different, right? I need you to like either help me with integration. Integration is fine, right? Integration is something that's normal, but I want you to build this one very specific feature for me. And you're going to get like so many clients or customers who are going to come and say that. What would you suggest, especially with the first 5 customers and then beyond first 5 customers? Do you actually heed their request for the logo, or do you say, hey, this is a productized solution and we're not going to actually build something custom for you because, hey, time is money, yada, yada, yada.
100%. If all 5 of them are asking for the same thing, you know what you need to do, right? If 1 out of those 5, I would ask them, be like, listen, we can absolutely put this on the roadmap. Will this prohibit you from buying today? You need to understand that. Okay. The answer is probably no, right? Because if you can solve it 80% of the way and that other 20%, something that can come down the line, I guarantee they're still going to move forward. Be very careful about overbuilding, right? You can always say that it will be added to your timeline, that we will absolutely prioritize it. We just need to make sure that other people are facing that too, right? Before we go out and over-index on building that. They'll probably respect you. When you say no, there is actually a lot more respect that comes out of it than yes. Most people, again, that are desperate or care to solve a problem will still move forward if it's 80% of the way there. And that's an important thing you need to remember.
No, makes sense, Jen. I think this has been a great conversation. I've definitely learned a few things over the last, 30 minutes. I'm sure the people watching this have also kind of learned a few things. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Maybe where to find you, pieces of advice, anything before we call it a day?
Yeah. Best places on Twitter. It's my diary of things that I learned in conversations with founders. Other than that, just be patient with yourself as a founder. 0 to 1 takes twice as long as 1 to 10. So once you sit there and crack this, it will get easier and you will get the compounding effects, I promise. Just know that it will take usually more time than you think it does.
Thank you, Jen. It was a pleasure having you on. Hopefully we'll have you on again, sometime later, where any new things you've learned, you can come share it with us.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you so much.